for a child is, as for a man or woman, is very hard. The infant mortality rate is 35%, which means that they either die at birth or they die soon after birth. They do not have proper prenatal care or postnatal care. There is rampant disease, malaria in certain of the areas. The Gondar area where the Jews are, excuse me, basically is on a plateau and it's higher, and they don't have as much malaria, but there are other segments, sections that do. Flies are all over, and they don't even notice them. The flies are on their eyes and on their face and on their lips, and apparently they have caused a lot of eye problems. So there are a number of children who do survive that are blind or have severe eye diseases. Their throats are also, they have a lot of throat problems. But the children are, the ones that we did see, are delightful. They are smiling and they are happy. And they look at you and they want to be part of you. They want to know about you. And don't forget, there was a big language barrier.
I guess it's like children anywhere else.
We brought balloons, Jack. We brought in, David mentioned the pens. That was something they clamored for. But the balloons, I don't think they had ever seen balloons before. And we blew them up and their eyes got bigger and bigger. And it was frankly, it was one way of isolating those children who had some problems that could be treated. There were, as I say, 1 or 2 doctors with us that brought in some medication, topical medication, and for whatever it did for the 2 or 3 hours we were at that particular village, they treated them and perhaps left drops and explained to the mothers how to use the drops. Now, the children were excellent. I would take my child, you would take your child to a pediatrician, and the child would scream and cry, especially when you open the eyes or look down the throat. Not a sound, not a whimper. They accepted what had to be.
Let's look at a few more of the pictures, because we have several pictures of the children, and as a matter of fact, that next one, I have to say, Elaine, happens to be my favorite of the pictures that you've shown me. I think it's a very beautiful girl with, I think she expresses a lot of what you've been speaking about. Can you tell us a little bit about her?
Well, first of all, they're very beautiful people. They are physically very, very beautiful. Very fine features, very fine bones. That is Leah, and Leah speaks English. There are a few that do go to school. There are schools...
Oh, how old was she, by the way?
She was about 15. There are schools in the towns. In other words, these villages that we went to were way high in the mountains. In order to get to a city school in Gondar, they walk 5 miles. Now remember, it is not 5 miles over city streets. It is 5 miles, what I described before, up and down valleys. Yes. Some of them do go. A lot of them really don't. What they do, a young girl will do what her mother does. She will help tend the cattle. She will gather in the wood for the fire, the brush, if there is any wood around. She will pound the grain to make meal, and she will tend the babies, and that's what they will do.
Do you have any idea to what age they go to school?
I think they said, I don't remember exactly, I think they said that they went till they were about six times, which meant 6 grades. So, and they would, I suppose, till about 12, because the girls marry between 12 and 13, and the boys marry around 15. Arranged marriages.
Could you tell us very summarily a little bit about their customs, about their traditions? What are they like?
Well, for Jews, they are very, very strict as far as ritual is concerned. They definitely adhere to the Shabbat. They prepare for the Shabbat Friday morning. Their villages are always near a river, and now, of course, there are a few problems because the rivers are starting to dry up, but they will go down to the river, they will immerse themselves, they will cleanse themselves, they will put on whatever clean clothes, they will be clean. There is a change, and it will be clean. They will prepare ritual bread. It is not what American Jews know, but it is different bread. And they will then extinguish all fires. All fires, meaning there is some kind of a tradition of candle lighting, but that is not all over. But there will be no lights, there will be no fire for light or for warmth. So in the winter, when it gets cold, they will be cold. There is no reheated food on Shabbat. They will eat cold, or they will eat nothing.
How about holidays?
They celebrate 2 New Years. And of course they don't call it Rosh Hashanah, but there are 2, one in the spring and one in the fall. They also have the Day of Atonement, which is really very interesting because they celebrate it for 25 hours straight, fasting and prayer, starting at sundown the night before and going through the night so that no one should go to sleep and perhaps dream impure thoughts.
And so they pray through that 25-hour period?
That's right. They pray and fast through 25 hours.
And some of our people complain when they have to stay in synagogue till 2 o'clock.
That's right. And they are also, Jack, they are very obedient people because don't forget, most of them, practically all of them, cannot read. So the priests are doing the reading and they are just listening.
Interesting. How do they sustain themselves economically? How do they feed themselves? How do they earn a living?
Well, they're basically involved in agriculture. And of course now with the famine, that's going to be a problem.
They grow what they eat effectively?
They grow, that's right. Before the revolution, they could not own land. After the revolution, they were parceled out some land. They have cattle, they have some crops, they will make some metal work. They will take some leftover metal and pound it into working tools and sell those. The little statues that you've seen.
We'll get back to that right after our next break. We will take our break. We're speaking with Dave and Elaine Ravich, recently returned from a visit to the Ethiopian Jews in Ethiopia.
When you mail a UNICEF greeting card, it goes to 2 different people, your Aunt Lucy and to a child in another country who needs help. Healthcare, nutritious food, education. It's as if I split the card in 2 and each person receives half. UNICEF greeting cards have 2 destinations. Oh, I know Aunt Lucy well. I'm sure she'll understand.
Call 800-228-1666 for the nearest UNICEF outlet.
Dr. Everett Anderson is a professor of anatomy at Harvard Medical School and a March of Dimes grantee.
I studied development of life before birth, where so many mistakes can happen. What can we do to prevent these mistakes that result in birth defects?
Dr. Anderson voices the deep concern of the March of Dimes. In its fight against birth defects, this kind of basic research is top priority.
Support the March of Dimes.
When grandmother made sauerkraut, she added salt, causing production of lactic acid that preserved it. This was one of the methods she used to serve a variety of foods year-round. Today, food technologists use similar processing methods, often with more precision. For example, lactic and other acids can be used directly to preserve foods. Food science allows a food supply less hampered by season and location, giving us a better, more varied diet than our grandparents.
We're back with our guests, Dave and Elaine Ravich, recently returned from Ethiopia, visiting the Ethiopian people, including the Ethiopian Jews, which many of us have been referring to as falashas up to now, and from now on, Dave, I tell you that we won't call them falashas anymore. I think you've made your case. Elaine, you had mentioned something about these, the pottery, the folk art, if you will. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, they seem to be only done in one particular village. And from what we understand, that is not an ancient art. It was brought in by someone from the Peace Corps many years ago, and they picked up on it. It is made out of dried dung, and it is fired, but they are very, very breakable because really that's, the composition of it is very porous. But they make them in maybe 20 different molds. And they, when you come into this particular village, they are lined up. They are tradesmen in that respect because they know that whoever is going to come there, and that village, which is Waleka, That is an accessible village, and whenever anyone comes into that area, they will go to that village. The other villages that we went to, some of those villages had not been visited in over 8 years, and they never see any of the outsiders. This one where we got the statues, they know, and they're good. They bring you over and they show you them, and instead of bargaining down, you bargain up.
Interesting. Dave, what could you tell us about their circumstances in terms of physical security? Are they safe? Do they have problems?
No, they have a real problem. A lot of the men have left the villages, have migrated north to the Sudan. And that leaves some of the older people and the children. If you can envision a country not, in certain areas, not far removed from anarchy, there's no police patrolling, there are no government army troops in the area. One village that is weak would be a subject of attack by a stronger village. And there have been episodes of attacks on the Jewish villages. This is their major problem.
Are they essentially in a situation where they have to defend themselves?
Well, they have no method of defending themselves, although there are guns. They do have primitive rifles in the area, but outlaws can take advantage of them because of the weakened situation of the village. Don't forget, a village can be 10 huts. Comprised of maybe 100 people, 80 people, and this is the total extent of a village.
What's the state of their morale? What kind of spiritual mood would you say?
Well, their wants and their needs are basically simple. And their needs are not only basically simple, but they're basic. It's food and shelter. As long as they were able to grow food, they were fine. But now with the drought that has come into their area, they won't be able to grow food any longer. Even if there were rains coming now, they would still have problems because the people have eaten the seed. So that even if the land became fertile again, there's nothing to grow. There's nothing to start the crops growing again. And the seed that is used in Ethiopia is not produced anywhere else in the world. So we just can't, let's take American wheat seed over and we'll grow some wheat. It just doesn't work that way. And their situation grows more desperate daily.
And what's the relationship with the government? Can't the government do anything for them?
Well, the government has its own problems. The government is concerned with the insurgent movements, 2 in the north and 1 in the east. They're concerned with the immediacy of the famine in the Tigray area, where as many as 500,000 or 600,000 people. You know, the number is so massive that our minds can't encompass it. But in this month, this past month of December, maybe 600,000 people died. You know, I mean, you know, you read about a fire that takes 12 lives, and we can handle 12, but we can't handle 500,000 or 600,000. Well, this is what the government is involved in, so they really cannot pay an awful lot of attention to anything else. As I said before, they do resent the fact that the Ethiopian Jews want to go to Israel.
Do they take this out on them? Or is there any kind of rapport? Or
theoretically, the government has a policy of not supporting any religion. The Ethiopian Coptic Church, however, is the biggest religious group in Ethiopia. And so amongst equals of non-support by the government, some are more equal than others. And guess who's at the bottom of the line? And the Ethiopian Jews are not supported, really.
Would you go as far as saying that the Ethiopian Jews are mistreated by the government?
I don't believe so. I don't believe that they are mistreated. However, we did hear stories that several of the leaders have been detained. Speaking of leaders, you know, the concept of a rabbi came about after the Ethiopian Jews separated from the main stream of Judaism. They don't have rabbis, they have priests or kohanim, who are the older people, older men in the village, and learned men. And this is not passed on by birth, but by sort of agreement. When the leader or the priest dies, some other elder who is intelligent and learned will be named the leader.
Dave,
So-
we have one of your photographs of the leader. If we can take the photograph that's next to the last one, I think we can get a picture of what the leader of, I guess, one of the villages that you were visiting looks like. If we can get that picture shown, I think that might give us a good idea of what they look like. I guess it's the one all the way on the right?
The one on the right is the leader, the one dressed all in white. He is the priest.
Now, how old a man would you say he was?
In his 60s. He looks older, but
In his 60s.
everybody looks older there because of the difficulty of
And I
of the
guess
life.
he is considered to be one of the wise men of the village?
That's correct. Now they do, some of the villagers do read Hebrew. Hebrew was taught to the children. We've got some great tapes of 7 or 8 little girls singing Avinu Shalom Aleichem.
We have one photograph of a few children in the one to the left of that photograph. We can see a few children studying in the, no, it's the one on the other side. It's the third from the end. Now, the one more to the right. Now the other way. It's the one in the middle on the, that's it. That's the one we want to get. There we can see the 3 children learning Hebrew. That's the picture. We can see the 3 children studying Hebrew.
Notice that they are wearing yarmulkes. That is not part of their culture. That was brought in perhaps by Ort in the 1960s. I believe Ort was there for a while and then was asked to leave in 1980 during the revolution problems.
I'd like to ask a question. There is a good deal of aid that the international community is trying to get to Ethiopia. And a question, are the people who need that aid getting it, as far as you can tell?
Well, we have heard stories on both sides. The government, of course, claims that it is, and even Monsignor Cole of Catholic Charities said the majority of it is getting through. There are always going to be episodes of profiteering where some government officials sell it, move it out to the Sudan, sell it there. And the government in certain areas is not distributing the aid because of the situation with the Tigray rebels and the war in the famine area. But by and large, our conclusion was that most of the aid is getting through.
So people who are making donation to the various charity groups that are trying to help the Ethiopian people can have some confidence that the
yes.
bulk of the aid is getting to the people
bear in mind
who need it.
that the people in charge of the relief and rescue do not want contributions of food. There is no way to get it there. What they want are contributions of money with which they can buy a whole shipload of grain, because one ship is like 1,000 planes, and you just can't bring enough aid for the millions of people by plane or by donating cans of food. It's just an impossible situation that way.
Elaine, how important is the help that we're sending them?
Oh, very important. I mean, they would not be, those who are going to make it would not make it without the help.
So literally the help that the world can send to Ethiopia is going to make the difference between these people by the
That's right.
hundreds of thousands, if not the millions, living or dying.
That's correct. That is
Literally.
absolutely correct.
How can we help? What can we say about the kinds of things that we can do? And I'm talking about the average person sitting at home, perhaps sitting watching this television program. What can the average person do?
As David said, send your money. And send your money because you are having a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save lives. This does not happen, thank God, doesn't happen to everybody all the time. But your money sent to the Jewish Federation, or if you are not Jewish, sent to Catholic Charities because they are doing a marvelous job there. That money, and I must emphasize, that money gets through 100%. The charities are not taking anything off the top for any kind of organizational facilities. That money is all going through, and you send your money and send it as quickly as you can.
I would like to address a particular kind of person. I think with the experience you people have had in terms of charitable and humanitarian causes, you know very well that there are many people, as many as there are good people who do give generously to charity, there are many people who don't. what would you say to the person who ordinarily doesn't find themselves motivated to give to a humanitarian cause that's special about this particular situation, to perhaps get them to say, this time I will give?
Well, this is one of the few times that you can see the direct result of your gift. It's not a long-range project where you're going to build a building, and it's not a long-range project that something will develop in 10 years. It is an immediate problem and an immediate solution. And you know that if you give $10, you may be feeding somebody for a month and saving a life. If you give $1,000, you've multiplied it by 100. Millions are needed. And people who have never given before, because maybe they don't see the results of their gifts, can see the gifts. And that goes for the general populace of Ethiopia. In addition, perhaps the American Jews will understand that if there is a chance to save the Ethiopian Jews from extinction, they've got to do everything in their power to take that chance. We cannot afford to let happen today what happened in the 30s and 40s, when there were chances to save the Jewish community of Europe and people sat idly by and did nothing. Now, I'm not comparing the government of Ethiopia by any means to the government of Germany in that period, but because of the physical conditions and because of the drought and because of the famine, the whole Jewish community in Ethiopia possibly could be wiped out unless American Jewry comes to their specific aid. In addition, the American Jews have always been a charitable people, and the charity must extend not only to the Jews, but to the general populace of Ethiopia.
What was the most memorable moment of your visit?
It wasn't a moment. It lasted a day. And it was, I felt I was part of the 25-year-old history that is the history of the Ethiopian Jews. It's a religious celebration called the Sigd, which the rest of the world does not know anything about. Apparently it stems from the time of the return of the Jews from Babylonia. And at that time, the prophet Ezra redid the covenant, reworked the covenant, so to speak, and there is an injunction that the Torah should be read aloud 7 times during the year. And at Sukkot, at that time, he read it aloud to the populace in front of the courtyard. That was the model for the Sigd, because now they have taken this and they read aloud the Torah. The priests read it aloud in Ge'ez because nobody else understands it. But it happens on the top of a mountain because there's something special, according to them, about ascending a mountain. An important part of that is also, along with everything else, the prayer. It's a cycle. They do a prayer, they do a biblical reading, they do another prayer. But a lot of the prayers have to do with the giving of the 10 Commandments at Mount Sinai, and perhaps that is why they do it at the top of the mountain. And when I tell you the top of the mountain, it was a very long, difficult hike up for me and for a lot of other of us. But when we got there, which was 9 o'clock in the morning, the few of them were already there. They were Father Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's exactly what they looked like, Jack. They had the faces that you would imagine in your minds. That's what the artists would draw in the children's picture books. And they were chanting, as the music that we have heard earlier in the program. And they had laid out on a rock a scroll, which some Western apparently had given them, and they had taken it from their synagogue, chanting all the way up, after immersing themselves in a ritual water in the morning. And they had also the books written in Ge'ez. And they chanted and they prayed and they chanted and they prayed. And it's a fast day. And there may have been, as I say, maybe 12 people up there. But as we stayed up from early in the morning, we got up there about 9:30. We stayed up till late in the afternoon. People would come, we could see them coming from the valleys and winding their way up at the mountain, and at the end of the day there were about 500 people up there. Men, women, old, young, children. School had let out. Apparently some of them go to school on that day, although everyone up at the top they were not all Jews. So I was not sure whether some of the children were non-Jews who had attended school. One of the marvelous feelings was being in this rarefied air, listening to the chanting, and feeling myself part of what my ancestors may have done. Then we came down a little earlier because we wanted to experience the procession that we would see as they wound themselves down. Coming from the top of the mountain, they had the priests surrounded the scrolls and the books. There were colorful umbrellas, many different pieces of the cloth worked in together that they held over the scroll so that it would be protected from the sun. There was nothing else but protected. And they chanted and they sang and they danced and they hopped up and down, and there was an exuberance and a fervor in it. When they got back down again, the villagers who did not go up crowded around them and kissed them and hugged them, and there was supposed to have been a feast at that point, but because of the times, there was no feast.
Time has run out on us. I thank you very much. Dave and Elaine, you've been delightful guests. I think you've given us some insight that we need desperately. And I think the only other thing that I can really say to close this delightful visit with you is God bless both of you.
Thank you.
We would like to thank our guest for joining us for this program. We hope you will tune in for our next program in the series, Judaism Today. Judaism Today is brought to you by the New Jersey region of the United Synagogue of America. We welcome your comments and suggestions, and we invite you to write to us at the United Synagogue of America, 910 Salem Avenue, Hillside, New Jersey, 07205. That's the United Synagogue of America, 910 Salem Avenue, Hillside, New Jersey, 07205.